Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh-Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News Extra, broadcasting live from the Arabiya studios. These are our top stories. Israel marks 2 years since the October the 7th attacks as first-round talks to end the war finish in Sharm el-Sheikh. President Trump hints at sending Tomahawk missiles to Kyiv, despite Putin's warning it would end Moscow's relationship with Washington. And the US leader threatens to invoke the Insurrection Act, allowing him to legally deploy National Guard troops into Democrat-led cities. Today marks the 2-year anniversary of the Hamas attacks on the 7th of October 2023, where 1,200 people were killed and 251 were taken hostage. Israelis have been gathering at memorial events and have left flowers, tributes and candles at the site of the Nova Festival attack. The Gaza Health Ministry says 67,000 people have been killed by Israel since the attack. Here's some of what the family members of the hostages have had to say.
The sound of the guns that we hear right now, we don't understand it. We want that the peace will stop, the fire will stop, so all the hostages will come back. And to finish this that all the hostages will come back and we'll close this event.
It marks 2 years to our personal catastrophe as well as the national catastrophe that hasn't ended. The war still goes on, and above all, we have 48 hostages who are still waiting to come home to their families and to Israel.
2 years is too long. I'm very angry and disappointed in our government. They shouldn't have been talking to Israel. They should have been talking about putting pressure on Hamas, just release the hostages straight away. It's absolutely appalling.
To discuss this and all of today's stories, I'm joined by Managing Director of This Is Dubai, Michael Jabri Pickett, and columnist and correspondent Gemma White. Gemma and Michael, great to have you both on the show with me. Michael, let's start with you. So 2 years since that October the 7th attack happened, memorial events have been taking place worldwide today.
Yeah, there were, of course, many events that were happening in Israel, London, and there will be some events that are happening in New York in particular. It's a day where I think you do have to remember the horrific attack and what happened. It's not a moment where you look back on the previous 70 years, I think. I think it's a day in history that should live on its own to remember, the more than 1,200 people who were killed. But it's also an interesting moment to look at how people around the world have become very separated from what their government says publicly about their attitude towards Israel. And I think that governments are publicly saying the same thing they've been saying for decades, whereas I think the people are out on the streets protesting something that's very different. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a real disconnect between many governments around the world and their people because they're fed up with seeing the carnage that's happening on a daily basis in Gaza.
And I think it's a really interesting time that we're in at the moment because right now we're seeing these indirect talks between Israel and Hamas taking place in Egypt, in Sharm el-Sheikh, at a time when we know the 2-year anniversary has been today. So it's a real crossroads to where the future could possibly be, Gemma, and how these talks are to progress.
I think there's a real feeling that if not now, possibly never, or a few years down the line, this is the time to seize the moment. And it is very poignant that it is happening on the 2nd-year anniversary also. But yeah, I do feel that there is such an amount of will and strength to do this. We have the delegations from Turkey, the Qatari Prime Minister as well arriving. We have the US representatives arriving. This is a huge gathering of very powerful and influential people. If the this cannot get done now, then I'm not sure what can.
And I think that's a really interesting point, because I think Donald Trump actually spoke again today, and he said very close to making a deal on the Middle East. We know this is his 20-point plan, his peace plan he has put into place. He's got Netanyahu to sign it. Momentum is definitely on the side, but it's ironing out those crucial points, isn't it, Michael, when we talk about the disarmament of Hamas, when we talk about the Palestinian self-determination to be able to govern their own state. Despite all the smoke signals being good, there's a long way to run.
There is, and I think Hamas, they handled this well at the beginning when they said, we agree to release the hostages. So they sort of dangled a little bit of a carrot in front of Donald Trump, as well as in front of Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, to get them to understand that they are willing to talk. Now, I think the difficulty will be in some of the specifics that still need to be worked out, as you said, disarming and what role Hamas will not play and when they will stop being an effective organization as they are right now. And that's where I think the difficulty will come with this delegation in Sharm el-Sheikh, and that's why you have some awfully big hitters. You have Jared Kushner, who's going to be there. And to me, because he's no longer in an official capacity in the government, and because he is a relative of the president, I think that he's almost representing how serious it is for Donald Trump to continue to do what he's trying to do, which is, and I'm the first to criticize him, when the time is appropriate. But here he really is, I think, applying pressure for the first time on the Israeli prime minister. Yeah. And he has to continue to apply that pressure on Hamas, as do the Qataris and the Egyptians and the Turkish delegation, to make sure that, just as you said, Gemma, there seems to be a real feeling that if not now, then when? And it just so happens that it is, the 2-year anniversary where we finally seem to be collecting a little bit of steam, and maybe there will be an end in sight.
And earlier, I actually spoke to Dr. Mustafa Barghouti, MP and leader of the Palestinian National Initiative, about the sticking points for the Palestinians. Take a listen to what he told me.
The first one is to make sure that Netanyahu will not bring back the war or reactivate the war once the exchange of prisoners takes place. Second, the Israeli withdrawal from Gaza is not clear. Israel cannot claim that it is leaving Gaza when it wants to keep 5 major strategic points under its control, or when it says that even after the last stage of withdrawal from Gaza, they will keep control of 25% of that little area, which is no more than 140 square miles with 2.2 million people. That is unacceptable. The third point is specifically about the proposed plans from some sides to have foreign government of Gaza or foreign rule of Gaza. That is unacceptable to all Palestinians, not only Hamas, but Hamas, Fatah, Palestinian Authority, everybody. How can anybody imagine that we, the Palestinians who struggled for 100 years against British colonialism and then against Israeli colonialism, will accept to be ruled by a foreign body, especially if that somebody is coming from the side of the British colonial system?
So, Gemma, we just heard from him there about those major sticking points, but also we do know, like you said, Hamas, the pressure needs to be applied to them too. But what's really interesting is Trump has actually got Netanyahu to come to the table, to sign this deal. And it's quite fascinating how he's maneuvered as the US president, and he's actually done that.
I think we're seeing Trump's skill set in action here, and that is applying pressure to get what he wants. This is him actually bringing his business acumen into the Oval Office at the right time and for the right reasons. So I found it quite fascinating. We're actually seeing Trump flex his power in ways that previous presidents did not when it comes to Netanyahu. Now, he got Netanyahu to apologize to the Qataris for the attack in Doha. And But he's also giving Netanyahu the ability to keep his credibility intact. You know, he's using still quite powerful rhetoric. You know, we will support them all the way if Hamas does not, you know, disarm and, you know, kind of stop what they're doing. And he's also giving Netanyahu a way to say he can have total victory over this. So I think he's actually been very smart with this. But he's also shown very clearly that he is done with this, with what's going on in Gaza. He is kind of done with Israeli action now, that it's enough. And I think we've seen him leverage his relationship with the Qataris and also with Saudi Arabia, who have been big players here. They want to see the establishment of a Palestinian state. He got Netanyahu to sign the 20-point plan, even though within it there was not firm language, but there was an indication that a Palestinian state would emerge from this. Now, we did see Netanyahu backtrack after that, but still, it was in there, and it was something to hold on to. So I'm quite impressed with him flexing his power and what he's achieved from that.
And his transitional presidency, you know, that's something so different. He's not been diplomatic, is he, in many respects? And he's not been the traditional US president. Transactional's the word we always hear. And do you think he could actually bring this to fruition and we could see a final deal made that will make both sides agree to something legitimate?
So anything is possible, and I'm sure we're all hoping that this war finally comes to an end. But I think one of his strengths is that he can be mercurial and he can be unpredictable.
Yeah, he can change his mind, quite
Absolutely.
I don't think he will change his mind on this because so many players have got involved in this 20-point plan. It hasn't just been his work. We've seen all the Arab nations be involved in it. We've seen so many players. I don't think he'll be mercurial when it comes to this.
No, to this point, he hasn't been in the last couple of weeks on this particular issue. But what if Hamas stumbles, or what if Benjamin Netanyahu sort of takes his eye off, you know, a ceasefire deal? Will he continue to apply the pressure that he needs to? Because what is frustrating out of all of this is that we do know that he's presidential. We do know that he can make these things happen, but he's been in office for 8 months. And I'd love to know what it was that finally tipped the scales. And to my mind, it was that it wasn't the attack when Israel bombed Iran and then the Americans had to go along with that. And I don't even think it was when Iran reciprocated and then attacked Qatar. I think it was when Israel went rogue and attacked Qatar.
Yeah.
And that's where I think he finally recognized, okay, we've got an Air Force base there. We have wonderful relations with them. They are a strong ally. I can't have another strong ally attacking another ally. And that's when I think it tipped. So I don't think he's been so concerned about the death of Palestinians. Some would say that he has been concerned about how it looks on TV. But I do think that he finally he's finally focused enough, maybe for the right reasons, maybe not, but now I think he is finally focused, and I think that hopefully will be enough to bring everybody together and for him to continue to apply pressure so that this deal happens.
Yeah.
One thing Donald Trump does always say is he wants to end the bloodshed and he wants to save lives. And we have heard that since his second term repeatedly. But I do think for the first time in a long time, we're closer than we've ever been. And like Gemma says, if not now, when? So we'll wait to see how those talks shake out in Egypt. But thank you for your thoughts on that. Let's move on to another story now. And US President Donald Trump has hinted he may supply Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. So Gemma, we talk about wars that are happening.
Yeah.
We'll move on to the Russia-Ukraine war. 4 years this has been going on. And Trump did make an announcement yesterday and said he wants Ukraine to tell him their intentions first before the Tomahawk missiles can actually be delivered. Quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, why Would anyone want a missile? You know, let's kind of be honest here. It's not to put in a museum and everyone come to visit it. So there is obviously a reason for a country requesting missiles. And sort of is very wishy-washy language. I said earlier, I found it quite human, you know, but not presidential, and that's not what people are looking for from the president. So, do we know if he's going to do it? Is he not going to do it? We can't be certain at the moment. Zelensky's also been, you know, kind of on the fence. He said, "We will see." He's called their talks productive. But yeah, Trump said he wants to find out what they're doing with them, where they're sending them. I would ask some questions. I'm not looking to escalate that war. So he's, you know, it's there on the table whether he actually goes and sells the weapons through Europe. I mean, what do you think?
It's going to be interesting. You know, in the sporting world, it doesn't matter if you have men against men or women against women. When somebody has stepped over the line, we can all police ourselves. We all know that was a step too far. Either things got a little bit too physical too quickly, or we know when something was, when a whistle should have been called. And I think that with the Ukrainians having Tomahawks, it can escalate it. Now, you could ship them, or you could say you're going to ship them. You could ship them and then do nothing.
Yeah.
And that might send a message. But once you indicate that they're in the playing field, I think it changes the dynamic, and I don't know that there would be a temptation to resist for too long, or I think the temptation would be to, how long will I be able to hold out before, let's face it, I know I'm going to use this at some point, and that's when I think it changes.
And I think there's been a lot of hesitation when it comes to the Tomahawks, but we can't forget NATO and Europe hesitated a lot when it came to any weapons going to Ukraine, over tanks, over F-13 fighter jets. The whole time, everyone has been hesitating.
And Biden hesitated as well, didn't he, when he was in office, about letting the Ukrainians defend themselves and fight.
Biden did exactly the same thing. Europe has done the same thing, really struggled. The coalition of the willing, it talks about talks and nothing actually develops. So there is a hesitation with these. And the reason there's a hesitation with these is because they have the ability to carry a nuclear warhead. Another argument is they have to be operated by US troops because they're quite technically difficult to use. And what Moscow's saying is, okay, you bring in these Tomahawks, but that's an escalation because nuclear warheads can be used and America essentially are involved because you have your men operating these missiles.
The other unpredictable aspect is Vladimir Putin. So you could argue that you have rational leaders throughout Europe and in the White House. But because of how this war started, with Vladimir Putin deciding he was going to invade Ukraine, if you put Tomahawk missiles onto the playing field, what will his reaction be? And that, I think, scares a lot of people. So you don't want to escalate it unnecessarily because you don't know if the man whose birthday it is today is going to then take it up another notch. And that's where I think it becomes so untenable. It's not as though you're having regular ceasefire talks with Vladimir Putin, right? You don't really, I think, get a sense of where his mind is and what it is that he wants. Presumably, he needs to be able to declare victory to some extent because of how much this war has cost his people. But you still don't know what it is that he wants in the short term and what he's comfortable saying publicly he wants.
It's very shades of Cuban Missile Crisis, isn't it? The brinkmanship, the constant sort of moving forward and the misinformation. Because as you said, they're not having conversations. They're not talking because Donald Trump would be saying, we're talking on the phone. But yeah, those conversations are just not taking place.
And earlier I spoke to Tobias Alwood, defense and security analyst, and he made a really good point to me. He said, basically, Trump has no idea what Russia is up to. They've lost control of what Russia's actually doing because, as you say, those talks are not happening. And we've seen that President Putin today has held talks with Turkey's Erdogan. He's held talks with India. He's held talks with so many different people. And right now, where and what is next if these tomahawks come in? And it's very difficult because we know Donald Trump tried to bring Putin out of isolation, had that Alaska summit. So right now, like you said, it just feels we don't know where we are when it comes to the situation. And is an escalation right now the right thing to do? It's a difficult one to answer.
And even Vladimir Putin a few days ago was quoted as saying that he thinks the U.S. should not, but he also thinks that he knows Donald Trump well enough, who he said likes to shock. He thinks Donald Trump won't sell Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. So Vladimir Putin seems to think he knows the players. I don't know that he necessarily does, and certainly giving the Ukrainians Tomahawk missiles would change the dynamics.
I'm not sure as well that Putin fully understands the humiliation that he put Trump through post-Alaska. You know, he was given the red carpet treatment. We discussed it on the show. He was given the flyby. He was given all of this.
Went in the car with him.
Yeah, and
in
then,
the Beast. Yeah.
And then he turned around and just absolutely kind of, you know, blew things up in Trump's face. I don't think, for as much as Putin thinks he understands Trump, I don't think he fully understands the gravity of the attack on his ego that was.
I also agree with that, but it is somebody's birthday today. It's Vladimir Putin's birthday today. He's 73 years old. I can't believe that in many respects. He got a birthday card from Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea. I think big questions are being asked right now. What happens in Russia the day after Vladimir Putin? And this is something that many people are trying to speculate on.
There's no clear succession, is there?
There really isn't.
No.
And when you stop and look at it, 73, and he looks like he's still a vibrant man.
Absolutely.
He could go another 10 years. And that's an awful long time for one man to be in charge. He needs, obviously, to save face coming out of this, at least with his own people, coming out of this war, whenever the end is for this. Now, this is also day 1,321. And I think he needs to figure out what is going to happen afterwards. There's an awful lot of money, Russian frozen assets around the world. I'm sure he would like to get to a place where he has normalized relations with a few countries beyond just India and North Korea and China. So maybe he needs to then start, after the war, sort of rehabilitating his image. And part of that might be sort of appointing a successor as well. But that seems so far off from where we are right now.
But it's always interesting when you look at somewhere like Russia, where they've had one leader for so long, the succession underneath is very difficult because they won't appoint anyone in case that...
It's a threat.
It's a threat. So you normally see a big vacuum, and it'll be quite interesting to see what happens to Russia post Vladimir Putin.
With this power vacuum, I think you're going to have a lot of people who want the job.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be fascinating.
It's going to be fascinating. Yeah, thank you so much for your thoughts on that. Let's move on now to another story. And President Trump has threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act, which will give him the legal power to deploy troops to cities he deems war-ravaged and also lawless. Meanwhile, officials from Illinois went to court to stop the US president from sending the National Guard to Chicago. Take a listen to what the governor of Illinois had to say.
I refuse to let Donald Trump, Kristi Noem, and Gregory Bovino continue on this march toward autocracy. Their plan all along has been to cause chaos, and then they can use that chaos to consolidate Donald Trump's power. They think they can fool us all into thinking that the way to get out of this crisis that they created is to give them free rein. Well, that plan will only work if we let it. The state of Illinois is going to use every lever at our disposal to resist this power grab and get Noem's thugs the hell out of Chicago. I'm not afraid. I am not afraid, and I won't back down.
So J.B. Pritzker there, not afraid, not going to back down. He's pretty up for it, by the sounds of it.
It sounded like
Yeah.
From the film Untouchables.
Yeah, almost,
what he
wasn't it?
was saying. It was very, very Hollywood, yeah.
Yes, he's up for whatever's going on. But, Michael, what's the latest? Trump's escalating the clash. What is the latest that he wants to do?
So he's threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807, which would allow him to bring military troops, American military troops, onto the streets and to fight crime, or the criminal insurrectionists, as
Yes.
he and Stephen Miller have referred to them. Now, as the left-leaning member of the panel, I would have had no problem with this happening because I think the National Guard is a good deterrent, just the presence. But what he should have done with Donald Trump, if I were his advisor, and I know that this is not in keeping with Project 2025, but if he was saying these are the top 10 most dangerous cities in America, Democratic and Republican, and I'm going to send the National Guard into all of those, it would be more difficult for Democrats to argue against that. And then he would also need Republican governors and Republican mayors to be aligned with what it is that he wanted to do. But he's so clearly going after Democratic cities and Democratic states. And that's where I think it's difficult for critics to see the reasoning why he would want to do this other than for politics.
It's an interesting point to make, but we have seen the National Guard in Texas too, which is traditionally red. So there have been some Republican states that have seen the National Guard. But Gemma, why is Trump trying to deploy the National Guard to US cities? I think a lot of people want to know what the root cause of all of this drama in many respects is.
Well, there's what they say it is, which is under the guise of crime and immigration crackdown, and then there's the reality, which is flexing his muscles in blue states. Kind of owning the libs, I think, is the phrase that they tend to use quite a lot. Getting their own back on Democrats who they blame for the White House shutdown. You know, it feels like it's payback time. To employ another kind of Hollywoodism in all of this. Now, I think what's so interesting is that the cities that he's deployed to, they're all saying, we do not meet the legal requirements. What is happening in our city does not meet the legal requirements for you to send in the National Guard. But we've seen the rhetoric from the White House. It has amped up like crazy. You know, Trump has called these cities like a war zone. White House advisor Stephen Miller said in Portland, they've been subjected to 100 nights of terrorist assault, doxing, murder threats, violent attack, and every other means imaginable. And White House spokeswoman Abigail Jackson cited ongoing violent riots and lawlessness. The language is inflammatory and actually, the Oregon senator has urged protesters not to take the bait. He's like, it's very obvious they're trying to rile you up. They're trying to get you to do the things that they're already saying that you're doing.
It's quite interesting because I spoke to a Republican earlier and he said that the reason they're doing this is because leftist woke ideology gave them no choice. They had to go and do the job. Thankless job, but it was a job they needed to do. And my argument is, how do people feel living in that city? Because what Errol Markov said to me earlier was it's not the wealthy in these cities that are subjected to the violence. It's the 25% who are not wealthy. And that's who they want to protect, because who's under threat at the moment. And that might be a valid argument.
So there seems to be some inconsistencies with how they're operating. In DC, the National Guard seem to be walking around very much tourist areas. They were not going into the areas where there was high crime rates. They were very much, again, a presence. In Chicago, it was very different. There were some instances where ICE agents with the National Guard went in and arrested a lot of people. Again, if the White House came out and said, we want the National Guard to be there so that they can protect federal agents, the ICE agents, regardless of what your thinking is with what the ICE agents are doing, that, I think, would stand up in a court of law. But because they're treating them as, they don't seem to be connecting the dots, and I don't understand why, because that's where I think their argument falls short.
And earlier, as I mentioned, I spoke to spokesman for Republicans overseas, Errol Markov. Here's what he had to say when I asked him if he does think it's lawful. Take a listen.
It's our assertion that it absolutely is legal. If you look back at the Rodney King riots in 1992, George H.W. Bush is the one who actually invoked it the last time in regards to that lawlessness. Now, everybody who's a decent person has a little bit of squeamishness when they see federal soldiers or troops going into American cities, but that's not in a situation where you can spin things two ways, but in this situation, we see this as a way to liberate these cities from their current state of affairs. The law is behind us. We have legal precedent as well. If you look at, the history of America in the Civil War, it was the outsiders who shot at the Union. So while these guys are sort of acting that they're some sort of revolutionaries, they're actually taking on a Confederate ethos. We are the federal government. We are the Union. We are the United States of America. And they are the rebels who are seemingly trying to break away from the Union. And that insurrection and or attempted secession, if it's not done in legislature, but done at least through action, is immoral and it's unconstitutional, it's anti-American, and those people are American citizens before they're Illinois citizens or Chicago residents. And I think that's the most important thing. Donald Trump is here to take care of the American citizen, and he's doing that, and he has the law behind him.
So that was the answer. He said Donald Trump has the law behind him. He's taking care of American citizens. But the big question is, how sustainable is this? How long can Donald Trump be sending troops into different states? It's a very difficult situation to be in.
So I would contradict a little bit of what he said there, because a judge in Oregon said no, actually, it was not legal what he was doing when he wanted to send troops into Portland. But I do think, to your question, it's not sustainable because I think at a certain point, the Supreme Court will get involved, and I think they will rule. And then I could be wrong. Then the law could be on his side, and then it could be sustainable, because I think that they would find the troops necessary to go into every city they wanted to.
Gemma, just a question on a personal level. I've lived in big cities. I'm a female, not that it makes a difference, but we walk around at night, and I lived in London, and there were times I felt extremely unsafe because there were not enough police on the beat. I didn't feel I had security around me or anywhere I could go to. Phones are stolen so often.
Yep.
Handbags are stolen so often. We talk about the National Guard. I would probably feel more comfortable in a big city like London if there was more of a presence. And I wonder if this is something that might help people and female just feel more supported in big cities.
Yeah, like sending them into the 10 biggest cities, as you said, with the most crime. And to be a presence on the street, and to know that you or I can walk home at 1 o'clock in the morning. We don't have to put our keys between our fingers, which is, or we don't have to call our friend when we get home, which is what us women say to each other.
Yeah.
We don't have to not put our earbuds in because we have to be aware of everything. The idea of like a presence around so that you don't feel that would be absolutely incredible. So it is also a bit of a wasted opportunity that they've created all this drama. You could have deployed the troops to make cities safer, because making cities safer is a soundbite we can all get behind.
Definitely, and I would very much be pro that, especially my own experiences of living in a big city, feeling extremely uncomfortable, and like you said, having to take measures, ring your friends, look in glass mirrors to see if anyone is behind you. It's that constant paranoia. So it's not a bad idea. It just feels a bit like a TV show at the moment when it comes to what they're saying, amping up the words and amping up the whole situation.
And I think this is where Donald Trump is in that sweet spot. He likes a little bit of the chaos.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that seems to be when he responds well. He also likes to be on the attack. And there's a sense of Donald Trump versus the world. Certainly when he's speaking, that's the impression that I get as a listener. If he were to have approached this in a completely different way, where he had said to Congress, I want to find the budget so that we can make sure that we hire thousands of more police officers in all the American cities. Because what you have to remember is the National Guard are military. Their job is not to de-escalate. And in many times when you're in uniform and you're coming into contact with a member of the public, you're going to need to de-escalate. You need to negotiate. And that's not why those men and women joined the National Guard or joined the military. And it is the job of a police officer. Again, Donald Trump doesn't want to be a team player all the time. He wants to do what he wants to do. He feels, I'm the president, I have the authority to do pretty much whatever I want. And that's why he signs all these executive orders. Because he doesn't want to have to go through Congress, because even though it's a Republican Congress, he knows he's not going to get most of what he wants.
And it will take more time.
100%.
It's that immediacy that he likes.
And
he says it, he does it. He's an immediate president.
And in his first day, he signed how many hundreds of executive orders?
With his big Sharpie.
Yes.
But a really interesting conversation. Thank you so much for your thoughts on that. And finally, we've reached that point in the show where Gemma and Michael tell us their stories of the day. And Michael, yours is about a new law banning loud adverts. I feel quite sad about this. I quite like it when the adverts come on.
Just suddenly blaring at you.
You're like, ooh.
So what's interesting about this is not that it was a California lawmaker who came up with this idea. It was the aide to a California lawmaker who has a newborn in the house, who's quite upset. And I know it's part of Gavin Newsom's government, so I know how you're going to feel. But this parent of a newborn was bothered watching, I'm not sure if it was Netflix or Hulu or Amazon or YouTube, but in 2010, there was a law for network broadcasters where commercials had to come out at the same volume, roughly speaking, as the show. Now, in California, with some of these streaming services and as well as YouTube, there is no law. And now there will be a law. They have to comply so that the commercial has to be about the same volume as the show itself. So for this aid, the newborn will not be woken up when the commercial comes on and it's so loud, because the advertisers are trying to make sure that we all stay attuned as we, are going to the washroom or we're running to the kitchen.
What about when you fall asleep during a binge watch? What's going to wake you up now? There's nothing to wake you up, is there?
But I also think it's a bit of a buzzkill, isn't it? Because I always quite like the adverts. They are catchy, and sometimes, I'm an advertiser's dream.
You are, but sometimes when it's blaring, it's quite jarring.
It is quite jarring.
I would say this, though. If you've watched enough YouTube, and most of my TV watching is YouTube, the ads are not entertaining. They are not. They are dead boring.
But I just want to say something. You can pay for the service that doesn't have the ads.
Yes.
You can pay for Netflix without the ads. You can pay for YouTube without the ads. And I dare to say it, but I reckon this man who's passed this can probably afford to do that. Just saying. Michael, no
His
comment.
newborn got woken up.
Oh,
so,
gosh, yeah.
Samantha is the newborn's name.
Right, okay. Samantha, when your newborn wakes up, you are in the depths of despair, so yes.
No, you don't upgrade your service, change the whole law. Okay, fair. Only in California, I must say. But moving on. Gemma, yours is about spooky season.
Yes.
And it's starting early in the Kardashian household.
Too early.
Okay.
So Khloe Kardashian has been all over social media, showing off her very lavish decorations, as you can see. We've got towering skeletons. We have the front of the house decorated. We've got, pumpkins all around the fireplace. Halloween is one night for starters. It should not be decorating from the beginning of the month. I'm completely against that. But for me, it opens up the wider issue of the commercialization of autumn, which I'm not really into. I feel like summer is commercialized. You have to buy new outfits and you pay for your summer holidays and summer skincare and all of this. Winter is commercialized because of, festive seasons and the snow. Leave autumn alone. Stop trying to commercialise autumn with your pumpkin spice lattes and your fall girl aesthetic and all these hauls that I'm seeing all over social media where people go out and buy absolute rubbish, you know, spending hundreds of dollars on little bowls that are shaped like pumpkins and things. I think you're going to use them a couple of times, then they're going to go in the cupboard and collect dust. So yes, for me, Khloe Kardashian has become the epitome of the commercialization of autumn, and I don't like it.
Well, I would argue with that because I'm a very keen fan of the Kardashians.
Yes.
Never missed the Kardashians. I still always watch it after all these years. Khloe's my favourite. I've always loved Khloe Kardashian. And Khloe Kardashian is such a lovely mother, and a lot of the stuff she does is for her children. She has so much money. She's got 2 children, and she does this so the kids can have a fabulous Halloween, and then you see all the other kids come around from there's a big Kardashian family. And why not be able to celebrate Halloween with your cousins and your siblings and make it a thing? And they've got so much money. What else are they going to do with it? I wouldn't mind going to Khloe Kardashian for Halloween and getting some of that junk, because I bet it costs a lot.
I'm being an autumn Scrooge, aren't I?
Well, I was going to say, you're almost sounding a little bit like the old man yelling, "Get off my lawn."
I'm perfectly fine with that when I'm yelling at Kardashians to get off my lawn.
Well, I think everything's being commercialised, and that's what makes me a little bit sad. Christmas is commercialised. It's not about religion anymore. You know, we go into the shops and it's about spending money, which wasn't the reason for Christmas. Valentine's Day's commercialised. You know, Michael, all of it is. But I think, OK, well, if everything is, give Khloe the opportunity to have
I really think that it's up to the individual. And I don't see that Christmas is, yes, I can see why people would say Christmas is commercialized, or Halloween, or Starbucks and their pumpkin spice latte, or Valentine's Day. But I really do think it's what you want to sort of get out of it. And it's what you want to, what matters to you, and the fact that you're going to go into seeing people's houses on Halloween. You know, one of the big things that people really care about is decorating before Christmas. And if they're putting a big effort and they want, you know, they'll put stuff up, you know, maybe December 1st or the first week in December. Why can't a new tradition start with Halloween, where, and let's face it, sometimes those spooky setups in front of people's homes are so much more entertaining than, you know, Santa Claus in a sled that does nothing.
There's some real junk Christmas decorations that go up. I'm not going to lie.
And now autumn's heading in the same direction.
Like
save autumn.
The blow-up Santa coming down the chimney, it's just pretty horrendous.
Just the legs that are sticking out. Yeah.
But anyway, thank you so much to today's guest, Managing Director of This is Dubai, Michael Jabri, Pickett, and columnist and correspondent Gemma White. And that's all from us on W News Extra. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on X. G&T will be coming up next. Goodbye and thank you.